Sai Ram, before we start, I just request everybody to be comfortable where they are, seated, preferably with your back straight, aligned. Take a few deep breaths so as to clear your thoughts and flush away or exhale any stagnant thoughts so that the mind is clear, empty to receive whatever you are destined to receive. So deep breath in, hold, out. In, hold, out. In, hold, out, Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Gajananam Bhudaganadi Sevidham Kavitta Jambho Balasara Vakshitham Umasudam Sogha Vinashakaranam Namami Vickneswara Pada Pankajam Om Gajananam Bhudaganadi Sevidham Kavitta Jambho Balasara Vakshitham Umasudam Sogha Vinashakaranam Namami Vickneswara Pada Pankajam Om Gajananam Mahakayam Viknarajam Vinayakam Vishvesham Vishvashaksham Ganeshayam Namo Namaha Om Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmalar Spatikhatrudhim Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Ayagrivam Yasyat Varada Vakradhyaya Parishatya Parashatham Vignam Nignam Tisatatam Vishwashremam Tamashraye Gurud Brahma Gurud Vishnu Gurud Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurave Sarvalokanam Visaje Bhavaroginaha Nidhaye Sarva Vidyanam Sri Dakshinamurthaye Namaha Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ishvaraphanamastu Sarvopanishad Ghao Dobdha Gopalanaldanaha Itihasancha Puranancha Dobdha Geethamrutat Mahat Harihi Om Sai Ram. Sarvopanishad Gavo Dobdha Gopalanandanaha Itihasancha Puranancha Dobdha Geethamrutat Mahat. What does that mean? Basically, it means all the Upanishads, the Ithihasas, and the Puranas are all cows. Sri Krishna is the milker, right? The milk is the nectar of what? The nectar that when consumed gives you direct access to Brahman, right? So it's the nectar of liberation, nectar of freedom, nectar that cuts the coils of birth and death. Therefore, all seekers of spiritual wisdom are those who enjoy the milk, which is churned and got by Sri Krishna, and that milk is represented by the Upanishads, the Ithihasas, the Vedas. So, listening to Ithihasas and Puranas is as good as getting the Gita Saram. Doktha Gita Amritat Mahat. That means it's as good as the Gita itself. The teaching of the Gita is verily accepted as the teaching of the Upanishads, as the teaching of the Ithihasas, and as the teaching of the Puranas, because they all are the sum total or the essence of the Vedas. So that is what that prayer means. So I started with that prayer. So thank you for all those who have registered and who have joined me yet again on another journey as I embark into the secrets of the Puranas. Secrets of the Puranas does not mean that every Purana has a secret, and that is the secret I'm going to tell you. The secret of the Puranas is basically it gives you another inner view, right, into how you can access the divine energies that is permeating all around us, consciously, subconsciously, and superconsciously, right? So Puranas, that is the secret of the Puranas, right? So I am going to be, today is just the introduction and the background. So I'm going to tell you what the Puranas are and what are the main teachings and all of that, without touching on any specific Purana. Next week onwards and following 9 weeks after that, I'll be talking about 2 Puranas each week, right? And then, every week on the each of the Puranas, there will be a reflective exercise given, which will be sent to you after the satsang on Saturdays, probably Saturday evening or Sunday you will get. It's good if you can go through those questions to see how much you've understood from the Upanyasa or the Pravachan, and so that you can gauge your own understanding and your own journey. Remember, we are all on this journey, and we all walk. I will walk at one speed, right? And I am going to take everybody with me, but I cannot walk for those who are following me. Therefore, you need to keep in touch. You need to keep up with the speed, right? At times I will slow down, yes, but my speed will continue. My journey will continue. All those who can come with me to the end, great. All those who cannot, there will be other opportunities, right? So if you are intent and committed on doing the course, be intent and be committed to completing the course properly for your own, spiritual salvation, for your own spiritual evolution, right? So each week when I talk about 2 Puranas, I will be talking about what they focus on. What is the focus of each Purana, the inner significance, what we can get or receive in terms of spiritual learning from these Puranas. And more importantly, this is a central theme that, cuts through all my courses and all my discourses and all my courses that I have done so far. What and how can we apply the teachings to effect some personal transformation? As I've always said, it's no point having the information if we cannot transform ourselves. So information must lead to transformation. That is the main aim, right? The aim, of course, the overarching aim is to inculcate an understanding of these magnificent works, magnificent, right? And to attempt to live the values from these Puranas in our daily lives, as I said, so as to go further and further and further away, live in the world, but move out of the world. Difficult balance, right? Living in the world, but trying to get out of the world, right? So Puranas comes from the old word Puran. Puran means old, dated, historic, timeless, right? Ancient. So vast genre of Indian literature, about a variety of topics, legends, traditional laws, historical facts. That's what it relates to, Puranas, right? They are known for the intricate layers of symbolism, if you like, which are depicted within their respective stories, tales, fables. To put it very simply for you, if I gave you a formula, to make you understand that formula, I give you an exercise, or I'll tell you an example, or I will give you an illustration so as to make you understand the formula, okay? So all the great works of the Vedas and the Upanishads and the 2 big Ithihasas which we have covered, which is, Bhagavad Gita and Ramayana, these are all the formulas. But to make you understand and apply those formulas properly, the Puranas are the inroad. They are the illustrations, the examples, and the way in. Okay. So, but the Puranas is not exclusive to just Hinduism, right? If you trace it, the research will show you that it is also available and has transcended from Hinduism into Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Christianity, and also in Islam. Lots of Puranic stories, right? So next week, I'll be talking to you about two Puranas, Vishnu Purana and Narada Purana. Then in week 3, I'm going to talk to you about Padma Purana and Garuda Purana. Then week 4, Varaha Purana and what is known as Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavata Purana. Then what Matsya and Kurma Puranas. Then in week 6, Linga Purana and Shiva Purana or Shiva Puran, as we know. And week 7, Skanda Puranam or Skanda Puran or Agni Puran, both. Week 8, I'm going to talk to you about Brahmanda Puranam and Brahmavaivarta Puranam, right? 2 Brahmas are put together. Week 9, I'm going to talk to you about Markandeya and Bhavishya Purana, 2 Puranas. And the final 2 Puranas in week 10, I'm going to talk to you about Vamana Purana and Brahma Purana, Brahma. And then in week 11, we go through the whole thing, in the usual form. What I do is summary, review, and consolidation. So in the form of some generic background information, right? Everything that you see or hear on TV or on the internet, all that is unimportant, right? Don't follow all those stories. But when you are looking at the Puranas, look at the stories that the Puranas is telling, the values that each of the Puranas is imparting. Look at the characters who are involved in these tales or stories or illustrations. That is crucial. And that comes out as the lesson for us to take and apply. Not just take and apply, right? Take and apply. You see, for example, right? When I did Bhagavad Gita with you, I told you about all the 18 chapters. But if you look at the Bhagavata Purana, for example, Srimad Bhagavatam, it talks to you about other things that have happened that is not specifically covered by each of the chapters or some of the chapters in the Gita, right? So it goes deeper into specifics and tells you or gives you clarity or gives you a better understanding or gives you a more practical perspective of something. For example, right? Arjuna is a great warrior, correct? Everybody accepts that. Okay. But he had Krishna with him. And Krishna says, fight. Why was he hesitating? He could not. He knew what was right, what was righteous and what was unrighteous. But yet he couldn't fight. Why? Because who was on the other side? His brothers, their allies, his cousins, right? Even his revered teacher and beloved grand uncle, Bhishma Pitama, all of them were fighting against him. So he couldn't fight. Couldn't fight not because he was not a good enough warrior. He could not fight because of the attachment. So the Puranas will focus on attachment, right? And the lesson that the Puranas give through the attachment is sometimes in life, people who are the most nearest and dearest to us will be the ones opposing us. You see? So that came out as a different color and quality in the Gita in chapters 1 and 2, but it will come out as a more clear picture through the Puranas, right? It was purely attachment, An attachment, remember I did Bhajagovindam with you and I said Satsangatvam Nitsangatve. Nitsangatvam Nirmohatve. Nirmohatvam, Nischalatatvam, Nischalatatvam, Jivan Mukti. Already in one line he's given you. The great Bhagavad Pata Adi Shankara has given you the secret. But these are even more clear pathways into the secret. How can we live in the world without being attached to the world? Right? The problem is attachment. This creates sorrow. Attachment creates sorrow. Sorrow clouds discrimination. When your discrimination is clouded, you make wrong decisions. And when you make wrong decisions, human misery is the result. So everything is connected like that, isn't it? So we are going to the root cause, which is attachment. You take that out, then everything else falls out of it. That was the entire teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Gita Sai Ram, or the essence of the Gita, is all about how to live in the world without being touched by the world's sorrows. That was the class teaching of the Gita. Also, you must remember, Puranas will tell you this, right? Nothing in the world is permanent. Okay, so I don't do bad, I only do good. Is that good enough? No. Even the results of your good actions must be given up, because if you're attached to the results of you doing good, even that will create sorrow because you're attached. This is why, in the Gita, I'm going back to the Gita, right? When Karna, the great Karnan, was going to breathe his last, Krishna went to him in the form of a disguised Brahmin and said, what can you give me? I'm a Brahmin. Of course, Krishna knew that Karna could not get, complete liberation because he had all those good actions, because he was a great, Dhanavadya. That means a great, charitable king. So he gave a lot of things, he gave without thinking, right? So Krishna went and said, if you have nothing, Karna said, look, I'm on my deathbed. What can I give you? And the Krishna, in the disguise of the Brahmin, said, oh, but you are a great king. You have done many charities, many dhanas and dhanyas you have done. So you give me the punyas of those dhanas and dhanyas. You give me all the good results of those good actions. I'll take it and go. So he donated all the punyas that he had accumulated, all the good positive results that he has accrued all through his life. He gave that up to Krishna. And the moment he gave that up, Krishna appeared in his form and said, now you are free to go and merge with your father, the sun. So that's why one of the teachings of the Gita is, do everything good, but do not get attached to the results, because that will create bandha or attachment. And attachment is the key problem. And we are attached to people, we are attached to things, we are attached to other people, we are attached to other people's things, right? So we are attached to all kinds of things. We are attached to bad thoughts, we are attached to bad words, we are attached to bad actions. So many things, right? The greatest cause of sorrow, right, my dear brothers and sisters, is that we never are satisfied with what we have. Number one. Number two, we never give thanks for what we already have. Because instead of being grateful, showing gratitude, we are still chasing something else that perhaps we don't need, but we want because someone else has it. Some other people have it, so we want it. You must understand one thing, no matter how much you possess, there will always be scope for more. 3-bedroom house, why not 4-bedroom? 4-bedroom house, why not 5? Right? Small car, why not medium size? Medium size, why not large size? Large size, why not a people carrier? Then small boat, then big boat, then plane. Where is it going to stop? Right? This will cause sorrow. And sorrow is the root cause of depression, greed, jealousy, all of that. As I always say, the Ashta Doshas, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Mamada, Matsyarya, Ahamkara. These are all arise as a result of attachment, which gives sorrow, which gives rise to all of this. Right? So all possessions are tainted with sorrow. wise man and the intellect, those with the right sort of intellect, right thinking, they do not grieve over the arrival of people, over the departure of people. They do not grieve over objects. They do not grieve over situations, because these will come and these will pass. But you must continue your journey. Therefore, the real nature of every individual is not the body. It is not the mind. So what is it? It is pure consciousness. Pure consciousness, which is eternal. Consciousness of what? Consciousness that you are just a little part of a greater universe. And when things change in the universe, you will also undergo changes, externally, internally, right? So when you realize and live according to that knowledge of that consciousness, that which you are, then that is the basis of unconditional happiness. What do you want at the end of the day? There's no point having everything in a possession form, but you don't have happiness. What's the point? Isn't it? So better to have less and to be happy constantly and consistently, rather than have everything and always be in a state of fear, anxiety, unhappiness. So what does Puranas will tell you? A person's sense of security or peace or happiness does not depend on anything external. It depends on how internally you have controlled your mind and your senses, because then you are going in the right direction. Then you are free from emotional dependencies. When you ignore these, then you get caught in this web. So the only permanent solution is knowledge. And knowledge on its own will not give you that freedom. Knowledge must be applied. So applied knowledge equals freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from sorrow. Sorrow comes from what? Sorrow comes from attachment. There you go. Right? So learn to live in a balanced life. Like Buddha said, samyak drishti, everything with a balanced view. Samyak vak, everything with a balanced speech. Samyak chintanam, this is Buddha, balanced thoughts. Samyak karmanaha, balanced actions. Right? You have to be free of these things that actually bind you first. Then you are free to focus on how to control that mind. If all these desires are existing, what's the point of you trying to control the mind when you're not controlling all these external? I did that with Panchakoshas, isn't it? It's no point going to Manonmaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha and Anandamaya Kosha when you cannot even control your Annamaya Kosha. And Puranas will tell you that. Right? Puranas will also tell you the powers that you can get as a result of mantra and yantra, and what not to do as far as tantra is concerned. See? And of course, your chakras. Some of the Puranas talk about meditation. And in that meditation, it talks about how the chakras work, how the Kundalini works with the chakra. That is why I put those 3 courses as a precursor to the Puranas. First week, if you remember, I did Yantra, Mantra, Tantra. Second week, I did Panchakoshas. And last week, before that 1 week break last week, I did Chakras. Right? And of course, they are all there on the YouTube channel, so you can go back and revisit. But these 11 weeks will not go onto the YouTube channel until the entire course is finished, and Brother Ganesh has gone through the editing, so it will be at least 3 to 3.5, 4 months. So if you're really interested in following this journey, you have to register and join the course week by week. Right? It's free. Right? And only thing you need to do is be committed and follow and complete the journey. It's like buying a ticket, a train journey, right? To go from point A to point C. Then why do you get off at point B? Finish the journey and get off at C, right? So right understanding and conviction to what you are wanting from joining the course. That is the only way to complete it. So the Puranas, actually the teachings throughout the Puranas, and the wonderful thing is they all talk about the same result, but they all talk about different ways that have been experienced by different characters throughout the Puranas, right? Like when we do Markandeya Purana, it talks about how to overcome death. I mean, not in a physical sense, but how to overcome death again. How to overcome being born again. That means you must conquer death. That is where, when we talk about Markandeya Purana, I will talk to you about the secret of the Jumsaha mantra, right? What we know as Maha Mrityunjaya mantra. Trayambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam urvarugam vandanat mrityor mukshya mamradad. Mrityor mukshya. Mrityor is death. Mokshya means liberation from death. So now you can see how mantra is connected. Okay, so we'll look at that. Now, some basic information about the Puranas, right? And I always give you some genealogy that is attached to whatever I'm talking about, because they go back in time. Before our time, they go back hundreds and thousands of years back. The timeline and authors, of course, vary and differ according to different sources, right? But the original references go back to the Vedas. If the Vedas are timeless and the Vedas are referring to the Puranas, then, one speaks for the other within each other. The Puranas can refer to the Vedas can refer to the Puranas. That means they were coexisting, right? So in many parts you will find. Of course, Maharishi Vedavyasa is the narrator of the Mahabharata, and he has been attributed as the compiler of the Mahapuranas, the 18 Mahapuranas, right? Specifically, he was in charge of some of the Puranas, and then of course he in charge of the whole Puranas, as in the Purana Samhita. That means the whole Puranas. And then he gave his main disciple, someone called Lomar Shanaha. He in turn imparted this to his disciples. So Maharishi Vedavyasa imparted that knowledge to Lomarshana. Lomarshana gave it to his disciples, and 3 of his disciples in particular comprised the Mahasamhitas or the Mula Samhitas, which later became divided as the 18 Puranas. So these Puranas are called Maha Puranas, and that is the 18 that I'll be looking at with you, for you, right, in the next 9 weeks. That means 2 Puranas a week over 9 weeks is 18. So why is so much of importance given to Puranas? Well, if you look at the Atharvana Veda says, and this is repeated in Srimad Bhagavata Purana, it also refers to this, right? Rikyajus Samadarvakya Vedas Chatvara Udrutaha Ithihasa Puranancha Panchamo Veda Uchyate. The 4 Vedas are there: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharvana Veda. The Ithihasas in the Puranas verily form the 5th Veda. And when I did Chandogya Upanishad with you, I remember telling you this. Chandogya Upanishad says the Puranas and the Ithihasas are the 5th Vedas. So there you go, right? Now, in the literature that was sent to you earlier, when we were informing you of the Puranas course, I said to you that the Puranas always have a characteristic called Panchalakshana. Panchalakshana means every Purana has got 5 parts. Pancha, Lakshana means characteristics, Pancha means 5. So 5 basic characteristics each of the Puranas have. They are called Sarga, Pratisarga, Vamsa, Manvantara, and Vamsa Chanurtham. Right, these 5. So what is Sarga? Sarga is cosmogony or creation, talks about that. Pratisarga is that which comes out of the cosmology or creation. Vamsa is genealogy, so it talks about gods, from where they come, sages, kings. Then Manvantara is the cycles of cosmic cycles, history of the world, where you have the cycles, the 4 yugas, they are cycles. And of course, Vamsanuchartham, is the account, Vamsa, the Parampara. So it talks about the account of royal dynasties, Surya Vamshi, Chandra Vamshi, those kings that come from this, So that main 5 characteristics is called Panchalakshana. However, some Puranas, like the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavata Purana, it adds 5 more characteristics to expand on this. So Panchalakshana is classic and appears across all the Mahapuranas, but there are a few, like Srimad Bhagavata Purana, that adds another 5 called Uthaya, Ishanu Katha, Nirodha, Mukti, and Ashraya. Right? What is Uthaya means? The karmic link. Fantastic, huh? Because it talks about the karmic link between the deities, the sages, the kings, and various other living beings. Isha Katha means stories of the gods. Isha Katha, stories that refer to gods. Right? Nirodha means the finality, cessation. Mukti, of course, everybody knows. Moksha, spiritual liberation, right? Ashraya means refuge. So how to take refuge in that God. That's very fantastic, isn't it? So if you look at the Puranas, holistically, there are 2 categories. One is called the Mahapuranas, and then you have the Upa Puranas. Just like you had the Vedas and you have the Upa Vedas, right? And you have the Ithihasas, Maha Ithihasas, and the Upa Ithihasas. You have the Mahapuranas, the 18, Vishnu, Narada, Padma, Garuda, Varaha, Bhagavata, Matsya, Kurma, Linga, Shiva, Agni, Skanda, Brahmanda, Brahma Vaivartha, Markandeya, Bhavishya, Vamana and Brahma, 18. These are the Mahapuranas. So what are the Upapuranas? And what's the difference between the Mahapuranas and the Upapuranas? Well, I'll tell you. Mahapurana is well known. Anything that is lesser known or less well known becomes an Upapurana. Right? Something that's an obiter observation, if you like. The distinction between Mahapuranas and Upapuranas is also historical. There is little corroborating evidence, that one is more important than the other. But of course, the Mahapuranas are more, primary than the Upapuranas. But the Upapuranas are also 18 in number, right? And of course, different authors in different timeline have argued, it's not 18, it's 16, it's 14, but that's not important, right? The fact is, we have 18 Mahapuranas, and the record shows we have 18 Upapuranas, which is Sanat Kumara Purana, Narasimha Purana, right? Brihan Naharadhya Purana, Shivarhasya Purana, Durvasa Purana, 5. Then you have Kapila Purana, Bhargava Purana, Vamana Purana, Varuna Purana, Kalika Purana, that's 10. Samba Purana, Nandi Purana, Surya Purana, Parasara Purana, and Vashishta Purana, that's 15. Ganesha Purana, Mudgala Purana, and Hamsa Purana, 18. 18 Upapuranas, right? But, in the 9 weeks, I'll be going through the 18 Mahapuranas with you. So next week, I will start with Vishnu Purana and Narada Purana. Vishnu Purana has got, all these Puranas are huge records, right? So they have verses as well, just like the Bhagavad Gita had how many verses, if you remember? I'm not going to tell you, you need to remember this, okay? 18 chapters, but how many in total? When I did each chapter with you, I told you each chapter has how many verses. Anyway, coming to the Puranas, because the Puranas are bigger in terms of scope. Vishnu Purana, next week I'll tell you, it has 23,000 verses, right? It is one of the most studied and circulated Puranas, and it talks about the avatar of Vishnu, right? Focusing on Vishnu. So if you take the sect, the sectoral behavior, of the Vaishnava clan, they are more focused on the Vishnu Purana. And if you take the sectoral behavior or attitude of all the Saivites, they take the Shiva Purana or the Skanda Purana as their main, right? So, right, to each his own, right? It doesn't mean that it is specific or peculiar to one class of people at the exclusion of another class or all other classes. It is available to everybody. Like I always say, it is a buffet. You take what you want, right? And you take and you consume, you digest, and you live, right? So that is Vishnu Purana, right? Narada Purana is also another big, because Narada is a Brahma Rishi, and he is the, what we call the Swargalok. He travels through all the Bhuloka, and Swaloka, and he talks to everybody about stories and all of that, right? So Narada Purana is also very, very big. 25,000 verses this Narada Purana has, 25,000. And it talks about all kinds of things, right? It talks about philosophies, it talks about soteriology, it talks about planets, astronomy, myth, and it talks about all the other deities as well, right? So it's fantastic. That is next week. Then in week 3, I'm going to talk to you about Padma Purana and Garuda Purana. Padma Purana is also quite large. I think it has about 55,000 verses. 55,000 verses. And it talks about cosmology of the world from a life perspective of Lord Vishnu. It talks about different festivals, legends. It talks about the Shaptatithas, the 7 holy rivers, right? And it talks about Rama and Sita as well, Padma Purana. So very interesting, right? It is a detailed, how can I say, a detailed treatise of, on pilgrimage, if you like, into the thing. Garuda Purana is fantastic. Now, if you shouldn't miss any of the Puranas, but Garuda Purana is very, very important because it is a conversation between Vishnu and Garuda, who is his vehicle. And some of the things they talk about is just, fantastic. I mean, it is out of this world, right? So what do they talk about? They talk about so many different things, They talk about different genres. They talk about yoga, for example. And Vishnu tells Garuda, what is yoga? And, and basically through these Puranas, we are getting to know what was told by the master to his driver, right? Master is Vishnu, driver is Garuda, right? Sankhya Yoga, it talks about Advaita Yoga. It talks about, Ashtanga Yoga. It talks about personal development and the benefits of self-knowledge. But more importantly, Garuda Purana talks to you about karmic consequences. And it talks to you about punishments, right? All the punishments that come to you as a result of bad thoughts, bad words, and bad actions. The Garuda Purana has got details. So if you do this, this will be the action. If you do that, do that. I'm not going to focus on that, but I'm just telling you, it is there in Garuda Purana. So I'm going to talk to you about other things that's going to help you on your journey, right? Not derail you from your journey. Week 4, I'm going to talk to you about Varaha and Bhagavata Purana. Varaha, as you know, is one of the... Now, some of these Puranas are actually the incarnations, from Vishnu's Dashavataram, right? Varaha Purana is one of them. Kurma is one of them, Varaha has got 24,000 verses. Primarily, it relates to how you engage in worship, right? It also talks about, it is Varaha, but it talks about Shiva and Durga and all the stories of people who have got experiences with Lord Shiva and Durga. It's a Purana. Bhagavata or Srimad Bhagavatam, right? This is primarily talking about, Lord Vishnu, his avatars, and Vaishnavism in general. And there are lots of course, references to Mahabharata, which is just a small part of Srimad Bhagavatam. 18,000 verses. So it talks about bhakti, really, bhakti and jnana. Matsya Avatar and Kurma avatar are Matsya Puranas and Kurma Puranas. Week 5, I'll be talking to you about this. Matsya has got 14,000 verses and Kurma has got 17,000 verses. And what does Matsya talk about? It's, of course, it talks about the background to how Matsya avatar came about. And I think I may have told you that, Vishnu's Dashavataram that began with Matsya avataram, the idea has been taken and it has come across in the theory of evolution, right? Where they say that, life first began in water in the form of an amoeba, right? And so we have Matsya avatar, the first incarnation of Vishnu in water, life form in water. Then, of course, you have the Kurma avatar, which is a life form that lives both in water and on land. The theory of evolution, Darwin's theory of evolution, said the second form, is a life form that lived in water and can also live on land. Then we have the Varaha, only land. Then we had Narasimha, half man, half animal. Then we have Vamana, dwarf. Then Parasurama, then Rama. Parasurama, imperfect man. Rama, perfect. Krishna, God as man. And then, of course, Buddha and Kalki, right? So, Darwin's theory of evolution follows this line of thinking, this line of rationality. That's what Matsya talks about, right? It also talks about the Shaptatirthas again, Ganga, Yamuna, the Shaptatirtha mantra, Gangai cha Yamune chaiva Godhavari, Saraswati, Narmada, Sindhu Kaveri, Jalasmin, Sannidhim Guru. So that mantra comes from there, right? 7 holy rivers, Shaptatirthas. Kurma Avatara talks about the power of combination between Vishnu and Shiva and the related legends, including Tirtha Yatras, pilgrimage and theology. Fantastic. Week 6, I want to talk to you about Linga Purana and Shiva Purana. Shiva Purana, everybody knows about the Shiva Purana, isn't it? Linga Purana talks about the Linga itself and the iconic representation of Linga as representing, not just Shiva, but the universe as per Saivism. And many times when I've given talks on Shivaratri, specifics of the symbolisms behind Shivalinga, I have said about this. So the Linga Purana talks about this specifically, right? Talks about Shivalinga and the different types of Linga, right? And one of the stories that come from this, which I will share with you at that point in week 6, is the problem of solving issues between deities when ego comes in between. The problem was Vishnu and Brahma had a little argument about who is greater and how in Linga Purana, I told you how Agni Lingam solved that problem between them. So more on that in week 6. Then the Shiva Purana, arguably one of the largest Puranas out of the 18 Mahapuranas, right? It had more than 100,000 verses, making it the number one biggest, hugest piece of Purana. But now what we have is, research shows that we only have about 24,000 plus verses. Where the others have gone, I don't know. But Vyasa has captured the 24,000 and he taught it to Romarshana, his primary disciple. And we'll look at, Lord Shiva and his consort, Parvati, Shiva Shakti. And that Shiva Shakti as Surya and Chandra, the good and bad, night and day. So how Shiva Purana tells you to live your life, right? Week 7 is also another important week. I mean, every week is important, right? Skanda Purana and Agni Purana. So at the present moment, the biggest volume in terms of Puranas is the Skanda Purana. Skanda Purana has got almost 83,000 verses. And of course, it speaks about the relationship between Lord Shiva and how his son, Skanda, or Lord Kartikeya, or Subramanya, or Muruga, Guha, all these names, the birth, right? It's extraordinarily long because it contains a lot of stories and tales related to legends, parables, hymns, stories, right? It's a meticulous pilgrimage guide, if you like, pilgrimage guide. And it talks about 6 abodes of Lord Skanda with different significance. That's Skanda Purana, right? So obviously, what I'm going to be giving you is the essence, right? Because, just Skanda Purana has got 83,000 verses. So I can't be spending, weeks on end to talk to you about each of the verses. So I'm going to, like I always do, take all the fruits, blend it, and give you the Sai Ram, or the essence. So all you are drinking is the pure essence of each of the Puranas, right? Agni Purana has got about 15,000 verses, right? Agni Purana talks about the Panchabhutas. In talking about the Panchabhutas, there are various references to the Panchakoshas and the Chakras. And it also talks about Vastu. You think Vastu is a recent creation? Puranas were talking about Vastu Sastra. This Purana, Agni Purana, was talking about gemology. Gemology, people wear different Navagraha stones and all of that. It was talking about so many things. It talks about rituals. It talks about, it talks about food. It talks about poetry. It talks about metrics. It talks about grammar. It talks about distribution, Vastu Sastra, construction, plant, biomedicine. Can you believe it? Biomedicine in the Agni Puranam. Not modern creation. Back then, we already had it. Week 8, I will talk to you about Brahmanda Purana and Brahmavaivarta Purana. Brahmanda Purana, Brahmanda means big, huge, right? But it's only got about 12,000 or just slightly less than 12,000 verses. One of the earliest composed Puranas. And this is where all those of you who know, have you heard of Lalita Sahasranamam? Aruna, Taruna, Karangitakshi. Right? That verse, Lalita Sahasranamam. Just like you have Vishnu Sahasranamam, you have Lalita Sahasranamam. Right? When I do Bhagavat Purana, I will tell you that the importance of the reciting of Vishnu Sahasranamam. When I do Brahmanda Puranam, I'll talk to you about the importance and the significance and the benefits of chanting Lalita Sahasranamam. But the Brahmanda Puranam talks about law. It talks about governance. It talks about codes. It talks about diplomacy. It talks about trade, ethics. It's fantastic. It talks about a system of governance, right? That is why it's called Brahmanda Purana. Big, huge. Brahmavaivarta Purana is the conversation between Rishi Savarni and Narada Maharishi, and centers around, once they were talking, and they were talking only about Krishna and Radha, Radhe Krishna, and this on its own became known as the Brahmavaivarta Purana, right? Oh, asserting the supreme personality of Lord Vishnu. And it also talks about River Ganga and River Kaveri, Shaptatirthas. So there are many references to different things of, spiritual significance. Week 9, again, solid. I'll talk to you about Markandeya Purana and Bhavishya Purana. Markandeya, as I said, 9,000 verses only, but it talks about the Vindhya mountain. It's so important that Vindhya mountain is also featured on the national anthem of India. Vindhya Himachala Yamuna Ganga, it goes something like that. So it talks about all the important parts, especially it talks about the dharma of birth and death. And there is some references to Mahabharata And Markandeya is also very important because it talks about Devi Mahatmyam. Devi Mahatmyam, I think I referred to it when I gave a small talk on Navaratri, the significance of the 9 nights and the 9 Devis, Navadurgas. Devi Mahatmyam. And this is where Shaktiism or Shaktam comes from, right? It's like you have Saivism, Vaishnavism, you have Kaumaram, which is the worship of Lord Subramanya. Then you have Ganapatiism, the worship of Lord Ganapati. You have Shaktiism, only worship of Shakti. Like that, you have 6 main sects of worship, right? But at the end of the road, the journey, the destination is the same, right? The journey is different. Destination is the same. So Markandeya talks to you, Rishi Markandeya, right? Talks to you about how to attain Shiva through death, but it's once. You die but once, that sort of thing. Bhavishya Purana, right? Bhavishya means that which is yet to come. So it's like futuristic. Bhavishya Purana has got about less than 15,000 verses, if I'm not mistaken, about 14,547 or something like that, right? It is one of the 18 major works, if you like, in the Purana genre, right? So Bhavishya means it talks about different samhitas. Samhitas are parts of the Vedas. So there are references to the Vedas there. And it also talks about another Upapurana called Shamba Purana. Week 10, the final 2 Puranas is Vamana Purana. Vamana, as you know, was the dwarf. And they say little dynamites come in small packages, isn't it? So Vamana talks to you about achieving great things, right? Through its various references to tales and all kinds of things. Then finally, I look at Brahma Purana. Now, this Brahma Purana has got about 10,000 verses, and it's often referred to as Adi Purana. Just like Shiva is often referred to as Adi Yogi, the first yogi. It's referred to as Adi Purana because most of the Mahapuranas refer to Brahma Purana as the Adi Purana, right? The 10,000 words come in about 245 chapters. And it talks about the Panchabhutas, it talks about Vishnu, it talks about Markandeya, it talks about Mahabharata. So basically the entire mythology surrounding all the other Puranas, about temple, construction of the temple, right? This is something that I plan to do in future, right? We talk about the architecture of the temple, what the temple represents. For example, what the tall Gopuram represents. And internally, if you look at the layout of all the temples, they all have significance. The significance is actually according to the human physique, right? And different parts placed in different parts of the temple represents the anatomical parts of the human body. So where the brain is, where the eyes are, where the heart is, all of that is in, this is called Vastu Sastra as well, right? So we look at Brahma Purana as the last Purana. And then, of course, in week 11, we go through, from a summary perspective, we review and consolidate our knowledge of what we have covered so far. But if you think the Puranas is only a Hindu thing, then you are greatly mistaken, because you've all heard of Mark Twain, right? Mark Twain has said that in India, history and myth is never distinguished. The Puranas, as well as the Ithihasas, are fantastic tales that convey deeper truth. That is Mark Twain. Then there is another big character called William, Dalrymple, right? He says, these are people who have researched the Puranas, right? Now I'm telling you people who have researched on the Puranas, some quotes about the Puranas by eminent personalities, if you like. So William Dalrymple said, according to the Puranas, the Kali Yuga is the last age before the world is destroyed by a fire of 1,000 suns, where the wheel turns again in a new cycle of life and death begins. And this is the significance of the Puranas. So William Dalrymple. Gandhi has also said, I call myself a Sanatani, an eternal Hindu, because I believe in the Vedas, I believe in the Upanishads, and I verily believe in the Puranas because they confirm the concept of the avatars that have come and gone. Right? So, I mean, what more evidence do you need? If that's not enough, let me tell you what Einstein said. Einstein has done research on Puranas, and he said, my respectful study of the Puranas has only increased my reverence and faith in the Hindu scriptures. The Puranas were a door through which I accessed greater knowledge of the Vedas. Albert Einstein, right? Leo Tolstoy, everybody knows Leo Tolstoy. He said, every type of knowledge can be gotten from various accesses, but the main access is through the Puranas. When he researched on Vishnu Purana, specifically Leo Tolstoy is talking about Vishnu Purana. You know, Rabindranath Tagore, the creator, the author of the Indian national anthem. This is where he put all this, because he's gotten it from all the various Puranas. He says the Puranas teach you how to live without fear and how to hold your head high. It gives you knowledge which will take you to complete freedom. Rabindranath Tagore. Right? Abraham Lincoln, my friends, he studied the Garuda Purana. And he says, no one gives us joy, no one gives us sorrow. We gather the consequences of our own thoughts, words, and deeds. This is what I have gathered from the Garuda Purana. Abraham Lincoln. Can you imagine? Right? Vivekananda is also quoted on the Puranas. Vivekananda said the secret of Karma Yoga, which is to perform actions without any, fruitive desires, is one of the main focus of the Puranas. So to do things without being attached to the fruits of the actions. That's what I said to you earlier. The German, Hermann Hesse, he said, the marvel of the Puranas is truly beautiful because it reveals life's wisdom, which enables philosophy to blossom into practical living. I mean, how fantastic is that? Henry David Thoreau, another famous guy, he says, in the morning, I bathe my intellect in the stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of the Puranas. And that takes you to a different level of existence when compared to our modern world and its literature, which is puny and trivial. My God, how fantastic is that? Yogananda Paramahamsa, he has also said, he was talking about what Purana was he talking? He was talking about Shiva Purana, and he says, the Shiva Purana talks about how in shallow men, the fish of little thoughts cause so much of commotion. And in man with oceanic minds, the whales of inspiration make hardly a ruffle. I mean, how fantastic is that? In shallow man, the fish of little thoughts create so much of commotion. Whereas in the minds of men with oceanic minds, the whales of inspiration make hardly a ruffle. Paramahamsa Yogananda. Fantastic. Swami has also said a lot of things. If you look at, Sri Sathya Sai, summer showers, he's spoken a lot about, especially summer showers, 1974, right? I think Sathya Sai speaks, volume 28. He's spoken about Puranas and how the Puranas are very important. Swami said, it's, if you're just given rice, no matter how tasty that white rice is, you will feel very hesitant or skeptical just to eat it. But the moment they put, a vegetable or a bit of dal or, something. Or, sometimes they put dal and they put a bit of ghee, right? He says the Puranas are like the ghee. It just takes the taste to another level. That is the Puranas. If you have knowledge, the ghee will take that knowledge elsewhere. That is Swami. But I always say that which churns your own thing. This is my own take, right? One of the Vignesh says moment. Puranas are that which churns your thinking, and it churns it in such a way that the churning takes all the negative out and leaves all the positive back in. So you can use that to evolve into a higher state of consciousness. Okay, so that is the introduction to the wonderful secrets of the Puranas. Next week, I will talk to you about Vishnu Purana and Narada Purana. Please spread this to whoever you think might be interested and whoever you think will gain knowledge from this, because it is, it is very significant, So I leave you with that. Like I said, it's not going straight to the YouTube channels because a lot of people think, he's going to put it on the channel anyway, so we'll watch it later. Nope. You follow the course. At the end of 3 months, we will think about putting it there. Of course, we haven't edited it and all of that. So once we do that, then we can think about it. Anyada sharanam nasti tvameva sharanam mamaha tasmat karunya bhavena raksha raksha maheshwaraha. Hari Om Tat Sat.